Hello, beautiful people. Welcome to Nectar, Sex, and Soul. I'm your host, Soraya Leonora, and I'm a holistic sex and relationship coach. This is a chance for us to get intimate, to reach far into the mystical, magical, erotic, tender, inspiring, vital, primordial depths of what it is to be human, what it is to express and inhabit these amazing bodies fully, and what it is to make love to the divine in everything we do. We'll be penetrating deeply into the nectar of what it is to be alive and turned on by life, how to transmute pain and hardship into pleasure and medicine, how to embody the union of polarities, including sex and spirit, and how to love every piece of ourselves wholeheartedly. This is a space where we don't just talk about the act of sex, but rather how sexual energy permeates every area of our lives as the seed of creation and the source from which we all came. Exploring sexuality in this way not only takes our sex lives to the next level, but is a catalyst for a life that turns us on in each and every moment, not just in the bedroom. Within you stirs a sexual vitality that is capable of so much more than you could possibly imagine. This is what we explore on Nectar, Sex, and Soul. Thanks for coming to play. Hello, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us on Nectar, Sex, and Soul today. I just want to say this episode and a couple others with guests, we had a few tech difficulties and we had to record over Zoom, which made the audio quality not quite as top-notch as it normally is. So if this is your first episode you're listening to, do know this is not the standard audio quality and that the rest of the episodes are much better except for one or two, and I think we have the tech issue solved. So going forward, the episode should have a much more clear audio quality, but it's really not that bad. Don't let it stop you from listening. This is truly an amazing episode, and I am so excited to share this wisdom with you today. So thank you for rolling with us as we smooth things out in the podcasting process. We super appreciate you all. Enjoy the show. Hello, everyone. Welcome to Nectar, Sex, and Soul. This is Soraya Leonora. I am so excited about the guest we have on here today. We have a super special guest named Rachel Ruva. She is a birth keeper, a portal tender, and an apprentice to the plants. And she has played such a pivotal role in my journey. I have been so inspired by her word weaving, the way that she carries herself in the world, the way that she channels such potent wisdom through the power of the word and the work that she does in the world. She is just such a living embodiment of ancient feminine wisdom and motherhood in the modern world. She is carrying super potent codes that this world is desperately in need of right now. And the work that she does for women, for the planet, for the children, for sisterhood, and for soulful living, for really bringing humanity back to its roots, restoring the soul in humanity, is just so inspiring. It's such a joy and an honor and pleasure to have her here today. And this is the first opportunity I've had to really drop in with her for like 7+ years. So I'm just so grateful to have her here sharing her wisdom with us today. And I really want to encourage everyone to drop in with this wisdom, even though we are going to be discussing a lot of themes around the feminine. If, regardless of your gender, if you want to be more in touch with the feminine, with the women in your life, with the planet, with a soulful quality of life, then this episode is going to be really nourishing for you and very insightful. And I'm really excited to see what comes through. There are so many topics we want to get into. And so we're just going to see where this takes us. And one of the core things we're going to focus on is restoring the sacred to the slandered. This is a term, a phrase that Rachel came through with that I just love so much. And we're going to be getting into all kinds of things. So I guess I want to start this by saying sex is the thing that we all have in common. We all arrived here through sexual energy. It's what we're made out of, and sex leads to birth, and birth is how we all arrived here on this planet. And there's so much misinformation and lack of education and harmful programming around both sex and birth. And that is what imprints our life force and what we have to carry through our lives and work to deprogram and rewrite the story around. And so I see sex and birth and our disconnection from the feminine, the body, earth, shadow, sex, embodied wisdom and intuition, that kind of primordial instinctual human knowing. All of this humanity has become super disconnected from. And with that, we have become super disconnected from our roots and from our sense of soul. And so all of this feels very intertwined to me, and it's a really cool crossover between my work and Rachel's work. So I'm really excited to dive into these topics and just see where they take us today. So Rachel, thank you so much for being here. It's such a gift to have you. Thank you for your time. We had some major tech issues today, so she's been a major trooper working with me on that. And welcome. Thank you for being here.
Wow. Thank you for such a generous and beautiful introduction. I feel so seen and loved. And I really want to reflect back to you what a strong inspiration you have been also in my life, and I really commend and salute the work you're doing in the world. It's such a joy to have this conversation with you, and for your willingness to really fuse so many worlds together and be that woman who's tying the bows, weaving the web. So thank you.
Thank you. Why don't we start by, do you just want to tell us a little bit about yourself and the work that you do and what it is that really lights you up and moves you in this world?
Mm. I'm a gem rising, and I'm learning more about myself through this lens because I notice a lot lights me up. um, Particularly working with women. And I'd say this awoke in me around the time that we met, actually, probably around 2012, 2013. I really started diving into my own womb, and that just exploded. Okay, what am I going to do in the world? Because it has to be with women. It has to be in this womb-centered consciousness. So I feel all that I do stems from that, from this deep remembering of the portal within this living technology. So that looks in many ways. I work with birth. So I work with women generally choosing autonomous and sovereign births outside of the system. Um, and that's so exciting, seeing babies born in peace, witnessing women birth in peace. I work a lot with plants and magic medicine, and I facilitate embodiment circles here in Denmark. I am an American, but I live in Scandinavia, and I'm having a lot of fun here. A lot of really radical, amazing women, and despite the weather being like total shit most of the year, I have such a resonance with the people here, and there's something about this like caving quality that we do in the winter where we get Danes call it hygge, like it's getting cozy, and we like dim the lights, drink tea, and we get real. And I'm like, I love this so much.
Mm,
So I have such a beautiful network of women, and we're singing alive the new earth.
I love that. Yeah, I love getting glimpses into your world through Instagram and the work that you're doing and the spaces that you curate and the magic that you ripple out into the world. And so I'm excited to get to dive into all of that deeper with you here today and to share that with everyone tuning in. This is really a potent slice of magic right here. So super grateful. And I'm curious, actually, what was it that called you into this work to begin with back around 2012 or whenever you said that was? What was it that really lit up inside of you that made you realize this was such a potent piece of your calling?
Well, I was on hormonal birth control from the age of 16 till about 2021. And when I finally decided to get off of it, based off of me and my high school boyfriend broke up. So that was like the only boy I'd had sex with. Obviously, I'm not having sex anymore because I had that Puritan Christian dogma inside of me. So I'm like, I obviously don't need birth control anymore. And I got off of that, and I never bled again. And at that time, I
Mm.
was deeply disconnected to my body. So I saw this as a gift. And I was like, fuck yeah, I don't have a period. I don't have to mess with that. And that lasted 4 years. I didn't bleed for 4 years. And it was in that 3.5 year end of the third year, into the fourth year mark, that I started to feel like, okay, this isn't normal. Something doesn't feel right. I'm a woman. I'm supposed to bleed every month. Like, what's going on? And I have no fertility awareness at this point at all. But thankfully, I had been guided to California. And at that time, I was hanging out in Grass Valley a lot. So this was like, I was being awoken to many things, as you can imagine. And I met a woman and I was sharing this with her. And she was like, well, have you asked your womb what's going on? And I was like, oh, like you can just talk to your womb. And she was like, yeah. And again, crazy concept to me, but I tried it. And I was just like, hey, do you need anything? Why are you not bleeding? And at the end of that month, I bled for the first time. And it was like, it's so wild. I can't actually remember that there was anything in response from her. Like I didn't hear a voice or I didn't feel any energy or like any clear guidance of like, you need to start eating this food or like la 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 la. But for me, it was just like this very basic check-in, this very basic, hi, when you acknowledge me, my living wisdom is willing to come through. I'm here. I just need to be included. I need to be presenced. And that, I mean, this was just so profound for me. So that was my rabbit hole into my own womb.
Wow, I love that so much. It's such potent work when we talk with the body, and that's such a huge core of the work I do as well. And I think it's interesting because I think most people talk at their bodies without even realizing they're doing it. You know, it's when we say talk with your body, listen to your body, it can feel like a foreign concept, but just the thoughts that we have towards our bodies frequently are a way of talking with them, or more so at them. I always say our bodies and sexual energy and plant medicines and all these things work better when we talk with them rather than at them. And so we
Mm,
can have these kinds of thoughts around like, oh, damn it, my body's not doing this thing I want it to, or it's not working, or I wish that I looked this way, or I wish this was different. And all of those are ways that we're talking at our body and usually not opening up a dialogue, usually not creating that space to listen and see what our body needs from us and what our body has to say instead of us
mm.
doing all the talking. And so it's really incredible to hear the way that just by being acknowledged, your womb was able to come back
She
into
was so
presence with
ready.
you.
She was so ready. And yeah, I often also say like our wombs particularly, but also basically our entire body is segmented or whole. They're just our friend and they want to be treated as a friend. It's like they just want to be included in the conversation. This is my experience. Like
Mhm.
the more I check in with my womb and just as I would a girlfriend and just spend time with her. I mean, the only time I've actually heard her say a word was when she told me her name was Ruva, which is why my name is Rachel Ruva. I just asked her directly one day, "What is your name?" And I heard Ruva. This was a
Wow.
name I had never heard before, so it was like brand new to me. And I'm like, "Wow, okay, that's beautiful." And I looked it up, and it's actually a name in there's a southern tribe in Africa called the Shona people, and Ruva means flower of God.
Wow, I have chills.
I know. Yeah,
Wow.
yeah. We
Phew.
have really potent living technology in our bodies, and all women have access to this. All women have living wombs with names and specific missions and messages. It's like the body's just a living messenger. Like we can be upset that our body's performing or not performing in a certain way, but it's all just an expression of balance or imbalance, really. It's all wisdom.
Completely. I actually just
Mm,
recorded a whole podcast episode about that, that I haven't released yet, and it's
nice.
everything our body does, it's talking to us. It just speaks a different language than we do with our words. Sometimes we will hear words like you heard Ruva, and other times it's through symptoms that are showing us something is out of balance, and we can either get frustrated with our bodies for that, or we can get curious and say, "What are
Yeah,
you trying to say that maybe I'm not hearing?"
yeah.
Mhm.
Mm.
Absolutely. Wow. What a powerful way to connect with her. And shoo,
Mm.
I love that. Yeah. And we are in relationship with everything. And I think it's easy to forget that, a lot of times the relationship we have with money or with our bodies or with these other various things, if we have this negative self-talk with them, and then you look at what would it be like if you were talking to a person or a friend in the way you're talking about your body or about money, would
Yeah.
that person want to stick around and hang out with you? Would they continue to show up to be in relationship with you, or would they shut down and
Yeah.
feel rejected? And so the way that we talk to our bodies consciously or unconsciously is huge. It makes such a huge difference. And rewiring the languaging around how we acknowledge them and or how we don't acknowledge them, because even ignoring them is going to make them feel like they don't matter. And sometimes they will shut down, sometimes they will get louder in the way they try to express, and listening is always going to help us tune into that deeper wisdom.
Mm, exactly. Wow. Yeah, our cells are listening.
Always. So I'm curious, I think we come into this world being so connected to that innate wisdom. It's like, and you know this, you work with babies and children, you have a son, like they are so connected to their bodies and to that inner knowing. And they're not worried about people pleasing until they're programmed to be that way. Like they're so rooted in their authentic truth, in their sovereign self. And then as we move through life, we get disconnected from that, especially depending on our upbringing. We're often told to not listen to the body, or to be rational, to be logical, to not honor our bodies in the ways that we have innately known how to do since we came into them as we started learning them. And I'm curious, where do you think this has come from? Like, how did our society get here to this point of just dismissing the body and the feminine and that inner knowing, that we are all tuned into for at least a short while when we first come into these bodies?
Mm. Sovereign people are powerful people. I mean, that's just basically it. There
Mhm.
are a small few humanoids who seem to be running this circus show, and it's very clear that the way to control the masses is to strip us of our dignity and our remembering of our innate connection to the earth, our mother, of the technology, of the brilliance of our bodies. So creating the stories and the illusion that we need industry, that we are dependent on something outside of us. The witch hunts, we can go
Mhm.
into all of that, but there's been a massive smear campaign against women specifically, but also all humans, to remove us from our authentic nature, from a nature where we thrive and we are connected and we're in our hearts and we're in tune and we're telepathic and we're intuitive and we're vibrant and sexual and but those humans, they don't really need so much from the outside, and that's dangerous. So, I mean, there's been a very methodical and deep agenda for, well, a long time, we will say.
Yeah.
And now we see, as you were speaking, it's like, yeah, they have done so much to get us to not feel our bodies, because when we feel our bodies, we know exactly how to move in life, we know our exact mission, we know our purpose, we know who to engage with, we know safe and not safe, we know everything. But all things, I mean, also this technology as we know it, but so many modern ideas and concept and ways of living, also working, create the tendency to get out of our bodies and into our head and into a very mechanistic way of being.
Mhm.
So we don't check in with our hearts, we don't check in with our wombs. Even me, who, like, I'm devoted to this way of being, I am a fucking heady person. And I really
Mhm.
enjoy the way my brain works. I really, really enjoy it. But it's still such a practice for me to be like, yo, time out, pause, breathe. How does it feel to actually be in a body? Oh my God.
Yes. Yes, I feel you. I'm also a very cerebral person, and I'm a very embodied person. I love being in my body, but we live in a world that very much focuses on the mind. And I think, yeah, that focus on the mechanistic way of things is also the way that we've justified as a species exploiting our planet and other people and thinking that we are separate from it. But when we are truly rooted in our bodies, it's impossible to not feel that connection to all that is. And
Mm.
it's I always say that sexually disempowered people are complacent when we're disconnected from that creative life force. It is really easy to control people, and a sexually empowered person is a fucking force to be reckoned with. And this is why when we want to domesticate animals, we castrate them. And
Totally. Oh my
this has
God.
been done to slaves for thousands and thousands of years, and it's been done to women. It's been done to our planet. I think the wild feminine is a very intimidating thing to people who seek to understand it, who seek to engage it with the mind,
Mm.
rather than being able to just be with, and to be with mystery, and to be with those dark, chthonic, earthy, muddy, bloody feminine realms. Like, birth is messy, sex is messy, women bleed, the earth is muddy, and the term dirty, the fact that that even has a negative connotation is so interesting to me, because I think good fresh soil is the sexiest thing. I love how you just did that in your body. Yeah,
Mm.
it's orgasmic, just the way it feels, the way it smells. And to take that and equate it with this negative, icky, dirty thing.
It's not shocking to me. I mean, for one, I tell my 4-year-old all the time, you never have to wash your hands with Mother Earth dirt, like before you eat, because like grandma will come over or whatever and be like, this routine where we wash our hands before we eat. I'm like, no, we don't do that in our house. Like, if you're in the city, wash your hands because that's city dirt for sure.
Mm.
But if you have Mother Earth dirt from our garden, please eat and lick it. We eat dirt.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I often think how words and language have been twisted so much. And commonly people say, like, oh, you're being such a pussy. And I'm like, pussies are literally the strongest fucking thing on the planet. Like, that's not an insult. Like, you're being a ball sack because ball sacks are so sensitive. Like,
Right.
ding, a little flick, and like, you guys are down for the fucking count. I'm like, have you seen me push out a 10-pound baby? Get real.
That is like my
So
most common rant. I can't stand that insult. It doesn't make any sense. I'm
it
like,
doesn't make
what
any
is
sense.
stronger and more fierce than a pussy? Do you remember where you
Oh,
came from? Have you witnessed a birth?
have you been in the presence of a woman having an orgasm, a vaginal
Mhm.
orgasm? Like, what? Oh God. So yeah, language gets distorted, but we're reviving that too. And that's a part of like reclaiming the slandered, because we have all these really sick, twisted ways of expressing that we're so
Mhm.
nonchalant about. And it's like,
Yeah,
let's bring back intention to the way we express ourselves.
it's huge because we're spell casting with our words.
Mhm.
It's huge. And yeah, I think it has become a very intimidating thing to be in the presence of true feminine energy. So we see a lot of distorted feminine and masculine energy on our planet. So a lot of times, like, when I'm working with clients and taking them through the journey of understanding true masculine and feminine energy, and I ask, what does feminine energy mean to you? A lot of times there's weakness, passivity, fragility, delicate. And again, I come back to the notion of birth. Like, have you ever witnessed a birth? Do you know what a woman goes through
But
when she,
probably not, but
right?
probably they haven't.
Probably they haven't. And just to think about that, of how ferocious woman is, and how fierce and strong and powerful and resilient and fully embodied. And that's really scary to people who are disconnected from it. It's really scary to go into full-blown wilderness for a lot of people who are disconnected from it, who don't
Mm.
understand the interconnectedness of it all, and the simultaneous benevolence and ferocity of the mother. And
Mm.
I think there's so much that can be so intimidating, that feels like it needs to be manicured and tamed and tucked away in a nice, neat little box so that it's not disruptive to those who are uncomfortable around it. And so we've seen that happen across the board. And I just love that the work that you do is shining such a light on the most raw, powerful
Mm.
expression of women in so many different ways.
It's my joy and my pleasure, and it's not a choice. It's an essential aspect of my being to serve life in this way. And we see in the realm of birth, this is like the number one place, the original insult, the original wounding. This is how to break a woman, is to fuck her birth up, to ensure she does not touch that power. Because when women touch that power, they are forever changed. They stop taking shit. They access the divine current of life that moves through our bodies. And it awakens, wow, it awakens women that see how they need to operate in their communities. They see that they're the matriarchs of their households. They understand what's required of them. It's like everything becomes clarified when we allow that life force to move through us unmanaged, when we trust that life force. And we can go back to those powers that be, in air quotes. This has always been known, even the apple. When a woman knows her power, she's dangerous. She is a threat to authority, because we don't need other people's authority when we understand, like, oh my God, it's all in my own body. What? So this is also the
Yes.
revival. I really want to see a world where women remember that all of the technology is already within us. We have all this like fancy shit in the hospitals that they're claiming we need to birth our babies. It's nonsense. It's absolute nonsense. We need our own bodies. We need to feel safe. It requires work for sure. It requires a fuck ton of unlearning. It's deep work. We've been conditioned so deeply. We've been lied to. So that work is required, but the technology is already there. Birth is like what our species survival hinges upon. Like
Yeah.
nature doesn't make mistakes. Like how could it be that we got to so many people, but then suddenly we actually need technology and we need hospitals and we need men in white suits to tell us what to do? I'm like, no, birth works.
Mm.
And women deserve to know that power. We deserve that. This is a rite of passage. If we choose to become mothers, this is how we become initiated into our power. And as I'm sure you speak to, we can be initiated into our sexual power and prowess as women also. And
Mhm.
that's another initiation in and of itself. It's still through the conduit of our bodies.
Yes.
But wow, we all deserve this. And I wish this for every woman.
And I love how you speak to the divine technology that we already have in our bodies. We often think of technology as this thing outside of us that we had to create through innovation, but the birthing technology we hold within is the most ancient, primordial, just divinely, most exquisitely designed technology possible. It is what has perpetuated our species on this planet. And to think that we have a portal to the void, like we have a space that we can intercept new life, that we can intercept a soul and incarnate it into physical form in our bodies. That is fucking magical. That is so mind-blowingly magical. And the fact that that's been taken so for granted, like humans don't really talk about that in a way where it's like, this is literally the most mystical, magical thing ever. That, and the fact that we can create life through lovemaking, through orgasm. Are you kidding me? Like, we are literally living the most magical love story ever. And we've forgotten about it. Like, so many people, it's just like, oh yeah, like birth is just this thing that happens, babies are just this thing that happens. It's like, no, this is our god self, our goddess self, our creator self. This is how we can actually create new humans, which is insane that we can even do that when you actually think about it, and that it comes through pleasure. So how could pleasure be a sinful thing when it is what
Mm,
creates, perpetuates life? And that this is the reality of it. This is how we do these things. And not only can we create life with this energy, we can create anything with this energy. And so,
mm.
yeah, just taking a moment to digest the magic of it is, phew, full on.
Mm. It's such a psychedelic life, and it would do us all really well to take that pause that you just invited and to really check in with all of these facets of life that we take for granted, that we're just like, yeah, it happens. And it's like, no, but it's so psychedelic. Wow, how could it actually be? This is why I really enjoy plant medicines of all varieties, because they really cause my logical brain to like stop and deconstruct life. And I'm like, holy shit, like raindrops, dewdrops on clovers, just the sheer magic of what this life actually means.
Hmm. Hmm.
Ah, yeah.
And when we're in this view of it all being mechanistic, it's really easy to forget that. And so I think the biggest way to come back to that magic that is in every moment, that's laced within the mundane, is through the body, through the
Mm,
senses. And
yeah.
even, so many spiritual traditions say that the body and the senses and sex, all these things are distractions to awakening, but the tantric path sees them as pathways to awakening. And it's a
Mm,
matter of working with them consciously, not being at the effect of them, not letting them be the thing that runs your life and you have no choice in the situation, but working with them as pathways to presence, to deeper
yeah.
embodied presence in the human experience that we are here to live, not to hurry up and transcend and make our way out of as quickly as
Mm,
possible.
mm. Yeah, and that comes back to descending consciousness, and this is a term that I first heard from Mama de la Maiko. She's on Instagram. That's her handle. Mikela is her name. What a wonderful woman, but she used this term, and I really love this because I've had such an issue with the ascension.
Mm.
I got into that for a moment when I moved to California, but then it was like, fascinating. Women are descending consciousness. We bleed down. We work with the earth. All of our movements, we birth down, we bleed down, we squat down low to the earth to harvest and pick the plants and knead the bread. And traditionally, we've been in this descending consciousness and really working with that energy and celebrating that we are here on this earth right now to be fully embodied and to understand that if we choose to go into the birth portal, this is ceremony and we get to choose to meet ourselves. We get to choose to go through that initiation process and approach the ring of fire, literally and metaphorically. And we get to see what we're made of. And that's such a gift in this like ultra comfortable westernized life that we have where everything's like a perfect temperature and we're feeling fucking good all the time and our pantry's loaded with organic food and we can do whatever we want whenever we want. Life is so comfortable. But it's like when we actually choose to go in and face ourselves and meet the mystery. I love that you brought in that word. I love that word.
Mm.
It's so potent and so necessary for the expansion of our human experience and the expansion of our conscious awareness. And when we deprive ourselves of those moments, of those initiations, we really do ourselves a disservice. We think we're like playing it safe, but in actuality, we're really limiting our growth potential.
Absolutely. It's like we're severing ourselves from the depths that is possible to meeting our soul. And in that way,
Mm,
that the embodied soul that is descending. Yeah, it's the yin current is that downward flow. It's gravity, it's rain falling to the earth, it's blood falling to the earth. It is that feminine flow of the downward motion. And I think there's been such an overemphasis on ascension and the rising energy. And I love that you brought awareness to the descending consciousness and the beauty of that, because even just this idea that density is less than, it's worse. There's so much emphasis on the darkness being bad, on like the feminine, the earth, all of these things being something that needs to be transcended, as if it's like we start here and then we get to some higher, more epic level. But it's through the Taoist and the Tantric perspective. They are two sides of the same coin. They are equally as necessary and ultimately part of the same whole. And one is not
mm,
better than the other. And when we try to oppress one, we inevitably dilute the other. And so I think we've done everyone a huge disservice by trying to downplay the feminine and the
mm.
body and everything that comes with that.
Hallelujah.
Mm. I'm curious, the initiation into motherhood that you have gone through, that has been such a
Mm,
huge piece of your journey. Is there anything that you want to speak to around what birthing new life into this world has birthed into you? Like, how has that helped you become the woman that you are today, doing this incredible
mm,
work?
mm. Yeah, but my son has gifted me a new life for sure. Um, wow. The precious gift of consciously conceiving him and going through pregnancy. and negotiating all of the emotions and sensations and waves that come around this process of growing and care tending life, and the realization that mm, yeah, my body is a divine temple, a chosen divine temple to give life. Like I am fulfilling my biological code here.
Mm,
And this comes with such a sacred responsibility. And I take mothering very seriously. We
mm,
play a lot, but I take it very seriously because what a pure little light this being is. And I really, it is my duty to care tend and create space and protect his light. And I devote a lot of energy into learning him and
mm,
understanding his way in the world, and understanding like I am a house that he exists in for, well, he existed literally in the house of me, and now he exists in my home for a short time. And we were speaking earlier and I said something like this is my gift to the earth. This is my gift of the future. Like I know that all the little seeds of light that I plant in him, he's already so full of light, but I also do a little planting in the little garden of his body, and I know that that will shine out for eternity. And I appreciate that there's an awakening consciousness in women and mothers around the world taking this sacred responsibility very seriously and creating community around it, and recognizing like it is our job to raise these children with awareness and to keep them connected to their bodies. I'm very, very clear with him about him checking into his bodies, about creating boundaries, body boundaries, about him trusting his bodies. And we go a lot into like, everyone believes different stories. The whole world believes different stories, and your only task is to figure out what story you believe. And the way to do that is to check in with your body. Your body
mm.
will always tell you. Even if everyone else believes a story, you got to check in with your story. And it's really fun to like break language down, these really simple explanations of like how life works. I'm like, wow, but it is so simple. And it's so beautiful to see him naturally embody this way of being, because he is so unprogrammed. And wow, oh, it's such a joy to be a mom. Hmm.
Ah, I love how you spoke to that being like your gift to the future. And you had also spoken to something earlier about being there to help him come into the world in a beautiful way, and also recognizing his own journey that he has
Mm,
and giving space for that. And I think that's such must be such a delicate balance as a parent who wants to protect and be there and support, and to also be holding space for the sovereign development of his journey that he came here to live. And
mm.
wow, just what a potent balance to hold.
Yeah, yeah. And I mean, I pray for him all the time. I pray that he stays connected to his light, and I pray that his guides and his angels surround him. And I really trust that. And I also really trust if he strays from his light as a part of his karmic path, and really releasing and relinquishing that need to control. And we were speaking to earlier, like to mitigate his pain, because there's this aspect of me as a mom. It's like, oh, to just cushion pad his life, like my little pure angel. Like if any other kid is mean to him, I'm like, okay, like fuck off, because he's so fucking wonderful. He doesn't have an aggressive bone in his body. Like he's never been the biter or the hitter. He's so lovely, and but I don't want to cushion pad his life at all. I glorify the pain, the sadness, and the grief in my own life, because they're treasures for me and they're
Mhm,
gateways. So I
mhm,
also like, but it's such a trip to be a mom and to care so much about this being and his well-being, and to literally understand what it means that I would give my life for this being. It's like, wow,
mm,
I would do anything for him. And so to like really negotiate that, and to be able to put into perspective my own childhood and the way that I was cared for and loved and raised and indoctrinated, really, in a way, with love for sure. But, my parents
mhm,
had their own beliefs. And then to come from now my own adult perspective and be like, cool, like, how do I want to hold space for him? And also, like, what, mm, yeah, what paths do I want to show him? What do I want to introduce him to? Because little children are brilliant. They're sponges. Like,
Mhm.
he asks really interesting questions because I have really honest conversations with him. Like, he understands that they spray poison on food, and why they do that, and why we don't buy that food, and why we don't eat shitty sugar. And like, we really talk about how what we have around and in our bodies matters, and we protect our health sovereignty by treating our bodies well.
Mm, mm. I love that. I love reading about the kinds of conversations you guys have and the questions he asks. It's just amazing the space you hold for him to be in tune with his own intelligence and his own curiosity, and to hold that
Mm.
space for him to explore that more deeply.
Mm.
Backtracking a little bit, would you speak a little bit more to conscious conception and
Mm.
what that means for you, and anything that you want to share about your process with that, or what, yeah, kind of that piece of the journey, what that meant to you?
I would love to. I would so love to. I had never really given kids so much thought. Like, that's not true. I think for a long time I was like, I'm not having kids. Like, really rejecting the idea of traditional anything, like no marriage, no kids. And then, yeah, found myself in a situation where the only way to really be with the man that I loved, because he was from a different country, was basically to get married. Otherwise, we played this like ping pong game because borders and things. I married this Danish man, and yeah, like a year into our marriage, so like 3 years into knowing each other, on New Year's of 26 2017, going into 2017, two pregnant women that I did not know were at this New Year's party, and I was bleeding, and like my womb went berserk in a way. Like, she was just so desperate for a child. Like, she just woke up like, it's happening, a baby has to come, and it was so shocking. Like,
Wow.
okay, like my biology turned on in a way that was just, there's no turning back now. This is my path. I didn't realize this would be my path at all. Like, my logical brain was not there, but my animal body woke up. And I love this. Like, I really, really enjoy trusting this instinctual self that can awaken in us and like
Mm.
almost like completely blindside us when our brains like, this is how it's gonna go, and this is what life looks like. And then the instinctual body's like, let me tell you something. Let me tell you something. And I work in that realm. Like, my brain also plays a lot of tricks on me. So I really trust my instincts. I trust the impulses of my body a lot. And my man had like already wanted children. He's like, yeah, we already talked about it. I'm like, no, we didn't. He's like, okay, good. Well, yeah. So he was down. Um, but it was, yeah, it was super important for me to like really um yeah, tend to my body nutritionally. So I had already been like following a Weston A. Price diet, which is like rich in animal foods and, yeah, traditional way of eating.
Mhm.
But then I was just like hitting that so heavy. So I gave myself like a 3 month window of eating like all the fish eggs and liver and like butter cheese, and just like really, really nourishing my body. And then we had a beautiful ceremony together. We lit candles and said some really, really potent prayers for whatever soul wanted to come through, just letting them know that we were ready and
Mm.
we were available for love and presence. And that is what we will devote our parenting to, is being loving presence for this being. And that was so lovely. And then the love making, which I'm sure you're interested in, it's so different. It's so different when, because for me, I've always made my partners pull out, like despite being on birth controllers, despite
Mm,
having condoms,
mhm.
like my entire life. He was the first man who came inside of me. Like, I was 29 years
Wow.
old. Yeah, yeah. Like,
Mm,
ever.
mm,
Ah, so
mm.
beautiful. I know.
Wow.
So that's so special. And it's, yeah, it's a totally different way of connecting and being together when we both have the sacred intention of calling in new life.
Wow, thank you so much for sharing that. Um, I am very interested in the topic of conscious conception, even though I have not conceived myself, because it ties very deeply into such a huge piece of my work is helping empower people around their choice as to when and if they create life. we are sold this lie that like we don't have any choice in that and that we need these external contraceptives and all these different things to prevent that from happening. And no shame or judgment for anybody who feels safer using those, but what's important for me is for people to know that there is a rhythm to our bodies that we can track with. There is a way to know when we are fertile for the most part. I mean, obviously there's always some space for error, but and for men there is the ability to orgasm without ejaculation and to retain your seed. And so to me, this this journey around choosing when and if we create life is really meant to be a team effort, and I think it's so often just put on women. The amount of times in my life that when I was younger and I had a sexual partner that they didn't even like check in to see if I was on birth control, if I had some way of knowing if I was going to get pregnant or not, like it wasn't even on their minds, and they weren't planning on using a condom or anything. I started realizing, wow, men don't really think about this or take responsibility. Not all men, but a lot of them don't. And it's kind of expected that the women have that figured out and that they're going to be the ones to deal with it. And they're the ones that have to take birth control and mess up their hormones or whatever it is. And so a huge piece of my work that is so near and dear to my heart is helping people understand that we do have choice around these technologies of our bodies. They are these brilliant technologies, as you said, and they're not just designed to have no autonomy in whether or not they're creating life. That's something that we can tune in with. And so conscious conception is a topic that I feel very inspired around because I think a lot of people create life on accident, which if that comes through and that's a blessing and that's what wanted to happen, amazing. Like we celebrate that too. But there's a lot of people where that happens by accident and it's not what they wanted. And so I would love to see people recognizing like this doesn't have to happen on accident if that's something I really don't want to happen. And simultaneously, I see a lot of people who are trying to get pregnant and it becomes this like, okay, I'm ovulating, hurry up. We have to have sex a bunch of times and make this happen. And I'm going to be super stressed out if it doesn't happen. And I mean, like, I work with couples who are like, it's so stressful. And
Mm.
especially men who are like, she's like pulling me in for my seed and I'm supposed to like make it happen this X amount of times in this window. And then if it doesn't happen, everything's a disaster. And it's like, oh, is that how we want to bring the child into the world? And can we trust the divine timing of our bodies and of that soul that is meant for us to be ready to come through? And if it doesn't happen the first couple of times, can we get curious and listen to the body and ask what's going on here? Is there something else that's needed? Maybe there's something out of balance in our bodies, in our life, in our relationship that we're not looking at that is needing some attention. And I think very often going straight to fertility treatments or like a stress around, we have to get this figured out now. And I am very curious about what that looks like when we can instead come into this place of like, what is our intention? Can we infuse our lovemaking with intention and with openness and with trust instead of this got to get it done, got to cross it off the list kind of Western way that we go about so many things in life and then miss the magic as a result.
Uh, yeah. Sovereignty begins at birth, and I really feel trauma prevention also does, like really including our children in these conversations from infancy is so crucial. And for me, coming into like what my almost mid 20s before I understood what cervical fluid was and understood that I had a cycle and what all the different consistencies meant, and that I had my mind blown that, oh my God, all these years that I've been so ashamed and embarrassed of this like weird shit in my underwear that I've been too scared to ask any of my girlfriends if they also have it in their underwear. And like, oh, wow, what the hell did they even teach us in sex ed? Because I don't even remember that basic, essential, crucial component of being a woman mentioned. I include my son in so many conversations around fertility and my womb blood and ovulation and how babies are made and la la la, because This allows him and hopefully his friends and his future partners to understand, like you were saying, we don't need to source from the outside to manage a situation our body already has under control. Um, we are cyclical beings, and really tapping
Mhm.
in with that cycle gives us so much information and so much freedom. We
Mhm.
don't actually have to outsource checking apps or taking pills or, yeah, really creating destruction in our bodies, because I'm going to be straight up, hormonal birth control is poison. All women
Mhm.
should get off of it immediately. Like I really invite and encourage all women to deeply explore avenues of getting off of it. There's so much help out there. There's so many free resources out there that women can hop on and understand how to get their bodies back in balance, and to take their power back, and to understand, like, the window of our fertility is so short. We have so much
Mhm.
control over whether we invite or do not invite life in. And there's also plants. Like, we have these magical plants that
Mhm.
work in our favor, and if a pregnancy happens and we really would like to release that pregnancy, there are plants for that too. And there's no shame in that. We really need to start embracing this aspect. Women have always held the power to release pregnancies, and it's been stigmatized, and it's been legalized and illegalized, like, so much politics around it. But at the end of the day, like, traditional and tribal women knew that in order for the tribe's survival, they knew how to space kids. Like, there are many tribes that had, like, laws, written or unwritten, that, like, 3 years, because basically when a child hits around 3, their brain expands in the way that they start seeing the other tribe members. They stop being in such a deep symbiosis with mom. And
Mm.
that's really when her body is mostly renourished and ready to produce life. Not
Wow.
not shaming or making it wrong if women have babies back to back, but in a traditional sense, this helped a mother stay nourished and be able to actually feed her children. It helped the other first child be mentally and physically ready for mom to sever and separate from them to now tend to a new baby, because it is quite a trauma to get a little sibling if you're not ready to give mom up. And we see this happening all the time,
Mhm.
and we get over it. Yeah, we can say that about many things. But if we're talking in a really in a way that supports the whole, if we're looking, like, to be community oriented and community minded, then women have traditionally taken the agency and understood that sometimes it's not the right time, and we can have a lot of ideas about the right and the wrong of this, and that's also fine. And then we can all have whatever beliefs we have around it, but I also invite that, like, magically there are plants that work in perfect unison to help us release pregnancies if it's just not the time.
Mm. Yeah, thank you for speaking to that. That's really interesting around women kind of moderating in that way and being so in tune with their bodies and being able to see what's in the best interest of the whole and of the tribe. And I do think that being disconnected from our power of choice and that is not so disconnected from the fact that our population has gotten really out of control in terms of how it relates with the earth, like the way that we are living and the amount of people that we have are putting a lot of extra strain on the earth. And I think women being disconnected from that ability to tune in with their bodies and to feel like they are at choice, whether that is at choice as to when and if they conceive, or if they feel abortion is available to us or available to them, or choosing that they want to release that pregnancy. I think there's just so much pressure and programming and conditioning and expectation that has distorted a lot of women's ability to feel like they can really trust and honor that internal wisdom and act upon that. And our society doesn't value that in the way that it once did. And so, yeah, I think that's huge. It's just being able to listen to that wisdom and recognizing the role that it plays in the whole. Women are the web weavers, they are interconnected to everything that is. And so, these decisions are very personal and they're also connected to something much larger, I think, as well.
Mm. You said something about trusting the timing and this, like, schedule oriented mental state we can get in, and I really want to expand that into how we approach birth and how I see this happening institution of birth. When I say institution, I mean the hospitalization, the industry of birth, which it is an industry, modern industry, money
Mhm.
making industry actually. It is managed to the point of induction and planned cesarean on certain days. It is
Mhm.
managed to the point of forceps delivery and vacuum delivery, where and I wonder often what energetic imprint do we place on these babies when we say it's not fast enough, your timing is not valued, I don't really care if you're ready or not, come now. And if you
Mhm.
don't, I will actually exert physical pain, literally, upon your body and make you come in my time. This is just fascinating. This is
Mhm.
new. Like, we didn't used to treat birth like this. We didn't used to treat babies like this. But
Mhm.
now it's this, we're so hung up on, well, yeah, there's a lot of mythos around the dangers of birth. And if it doesn't happen in the way that policy says, then it's dangerous and life threatening, which is total garbage. But also just that there is such a divine wisdom in the interplay of a woman's body and the intelligence of the baby's physical body and also the soul. So there's so much merging happening there, and it's all such a delicate and wonderful cascade. And if we really
Mhm.
make space for it, there's such a fine tuning that sometimes needs always needs to happen to allow this release of a baby. And we can like even extrapolate out to the stars, like do babies want to come under certain conditions? Probably, like that's their imprint, and then we're forcing them to be born like Libras and they're supposed to be Scorpios, and it's hilarious. Like, oh dear, what are the implications of these ultra managed forced births? And I'm just like
Mhm.
scratching really the surface of
Mhm.
this.
Mhm. That's
Yeah.
such a fascinating question because I was born via planned C-section, and I've always wondered that. It's like, how has that impacted me? And certainly time is a fucking struggle for me. Like, I constantly feel under pressure
Mm,
around time, and a lot of pressure from the outside world around how I work with time. And it has taken an enormous amount of deconditioning to find my own rhythm and honor that and slow the fuck down and be okay with my own timing and my own rhythm. But I think about that, how I was just in the womb, and then suddenly my mom's being cut open, and this like strange man with these bright white hospital lights is pulling me out. And what impact that must have had, and kind of being robbed of that initial birth struggle of like making my own way through the canal. And certainly not getting like the vaginal dose of probiotics and all of that has been something that's played into my health issues, I think. But it's interesting, I was actually like terrified of men and boys that I didn't know for the first like 5 6 years of my life. Like, I was so incredibly timid and shy around them and would hide away from them. And I would always say, I don't know him. And I would hide away. And so I do find it very fascinating that I've specialized in working with men for so long and that I've become quite comfortable with them. But I've always wondered how that planned C-section imprinted me. And not to say
mm,
like that I've been imprinted in a wrong way because of it, but these are interesting questions to ask around, yeah, what are the implications of what I call distorted masculine energy, where it's like that progress obsessed, not listening to the body, not listening to the timing, not listening to intuition. It's like, we got to keep a rhythm, we got to keep a pace, we're focused on a goal, a destination, and it comes at the expense of all things feminine. And it's the way that most of our world operates.
mm. Yeah, yeah, and what a precious invitation we all have to really check in with those origin stories. I often do a like it's called an origin story meditation in one of the programs I hold here, and it's just a really brief exploration of traveling into our subconscious and asking these questions. What were those original energies that we came into the world either by what stories we've heard or like what our bodies remember? And what did those imprints, how did they inform us? What stories were made? How did our nervous system form itself? Because this early formation has laid the foundation for our entire lives. So now we go around in a lot of unconscious behaviors or protective mechanisms, really based on the way that we came to Earth. And very sadly, over the last quite many decades longer, birth has been so managed that we have to realize, like, many of us came in a way that was kind of traumatic, probably
Mhm.
very traumatic. And so our little bodies formed a lot of impressions and stories super quick in order to survive here. Like, we had to. So I'm a number. Like, my nervous system response, I can go into numb super quick, and
Mhm.
it's so discreet. Sometimes I'm like, whoa, I'm doing it again. And it's taken years of really, like, yeah, just being really intimate and close and embracing myself to watch my patterns and see when I go into this freeze response. And I was also a C-section baby. And I can so trace this back not only to my birth, but also like the situation of my early childhood and my parents divorcing, and a lot happening there, of why it would make sense that my little body, to protect myself, would just go into freeze and not really feel things. So it
Mhm.
takes a lot for me to cry. Like, I have a really fast mechanism to shut down tears. And I'm getting a lot better through like very conscious effort, because I praise and cherish the release valve of tears. So, like,
Mhm.
when I can get into a space of catharsis and sorrow and processing, oh wow, it's just so divine for me. And I really envy women that can just cry like that. I'm like, wow, how do you do it? Um,
Mhm.
but yeah, it's a really, I think, a really crucial opportunity for all of us to explore how these initial nervous system imprints impact us all. We're all prone to different ways of protecting ourselves, and it
Mhm.
really all stems at birth.
It's true. It goes so deep. I take a lot of my clients on somatic exploration journeys to find where different blockages exist in the body that we can't access with the conscious mind. And sometimes we locate them all the way back to in the womb, like the imprint of
Yeah.
mom not wanting to have a baby and therefore feeling unwanted and unworthy, and how that carries with us throughout the course of life. And so, when I speak to conscious conception and accidental pregnancies and forcing pregnancies when when we might be needing to look at something deeper, like, I want to be clear, I'm not like casting any sort of shame on anybody who decides to go whatever route they want to go, but I have this curiosity around, if we really brought that intention into everything that we are creating, the way that we're working with our sexual energy, the way we create new life, the way we birth anything else into being in our lives, how might that change the world that we're living in? Because, like you said, so many people come into this world with so much trauma just from the birthing process and those very early formative times. And so, if we're not even realizing that we're creating life, and that's how a lot of people are being created, and then there's this stress around, like, oh, this was unexpected, we weren't prepared to bring this child through, and that's kind of the imprint that so many people are coming into the world with. It's it raises a curiosity in me around, like, what kind of world could we birth into existence if we brought more conscious awareness to how we navigate our sexual energy and how we birth anything into being.
Oh my God. Yeah, yeah, it all begins with love, huh? Like, we
Mhm.
really need love. Humans need love. Like, babies will literally die if they're not picked up. Actually,
Mhm.
quite literally,
Mhm.
they will
Yeah.
die. Like,
Mhm.
love is the foundation for everything, and it gives so much. Like, all of these stories of unworthiness and not feeling accepted and included, like, these are all wounds so many everyone carries in to some degree, huh? And it's
Mhm.
like, to really be prepared to be a source of unending love for these little ones. And it's not to say, like, I also have like off days where I feel like, fuck, I was a shitty mom today, like, it's
Mhm.
such a, I always say, like, it's not necessarily about the event, it's about the repairing afterwards. And it's the communication that happens afterwards, whether it's with our children or our partners. Like, we can all
Mhm.
be unconscious or assholes or stressed out or tired and say and do things that, like, we're not in alignment with everyone's highest good. And that's being
Mhm.
human. And we have to make space for that. It's the conversations that happen afterwards, and the brainstorming of, like, hey, next time I actually want to do this, next time I'd really like to try this instead, and I'm really sorry. And the courage to say sorry, and like putting the ego aside and being willing to be like, yo, I messed up, can we start over?
Mhm. Mm. Mm. I love that. I love that. That's so key. And yeah, we're all learning in this human experience together. And so I think curiosity is essential. Just like how could we do this differently next time, or how can I look at this situation differently? One of my favorite questions to ask myself recently is, how could this be happening for me? And it's so helpful if I'm like starting to spin out into victim mentality, or shit's not going the way it was planned, and just getting curious. Wait a minute. How, like, can I expand all the reality tunnels around how this could possibly be happening for me, and just get curious around all the unexpected surprises that could be around the corner, that this is actually an offering to me in some way, but I can't see it if I'm too stuck in it was supposed to go this way, which goes back to that
Right.
topic we were talking about of just divine timing. And one of my favorite jokes is, how do you make the goddess laugh? You tell her your plans. And just speaking to like the mystery and how life does take us by surprise, and just we are, our little ego minds can't see the whole picture. And so there is such a depth and a trust that can be terrifying in trusting the mystery and in trusting the body, because the body is not always making sense in a mental way that we're used to wrapping our heads around. Sometimes the body is speaking to something that there's this deep knowing, and we don't understand it with our minds, but we have to trust it and we have to lean
Mm.
into the mystery. And the need to know will just kind of cock block the magic. It's really, sometimes we just have to be able to let go of that and to trust that there's something bigger that we can't understand, and it's more about feeling our way through it.
We have millions of years of evolutionary genius on our side. Like we are so set up, and it is really like this beautiful frontal cortex that we use to like masterfully navigate this funny modern life. Like I also really love that. And this is when we park that and we get like deep into our reptilian brain and our mammalian body, and we understand that there's so much moving in us that we don't have to logically understand. We literally just have to surrender. All we have to do is
Mhm.
surrender and move the brain aside. And that's also how we can have the most, how, at least in my experience, I have the most connective, juicy, transcendental sex is when I get out of my mind
Mm.
and I get into my body. And it's this fluid space, and it's the exact space of birth. Like birth can be super orgasmic,
Mm.
and it can be super expansive and completely altered and psychedelic. And that is because we allow our juicy goddess hormones to do this like intricate dance in us. And they expand us in ways that our brain would prior to that be like, but it's not possible. And what will I do? And how could I ever expand enough to let a baby, like all of these things? It's like, no, 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 no. All of that will go away if we can
Mm.
surrender to our animal bodies, and then we touch God.
Yes. Oh, so well said. And on that topic, I love that you just linked uh, birth and sex in that way. And I'd love to just get into the topic around motherhood and sex, because I think that's such an interesting one that um, our culture often like doesn't see mothers as sexual beings, but it's like they became a mother through being a sexual being. I always say like the lover creates the mother, and then the mother births what will one day be another lover. And so it's like the mother lover connection is so deep. And I think there's a lot tied up around moms being so tied up in duty that they like lose their connection with their sexuality. And then there's this Madonna whore complex, that you're either like the Madonna that's like the pure, amazing mother and wife, or you're the whore that's like this sexual being but not worthy of respect. And they're like these two caricatures that are both two disconnected sides of women that actually need to coexist together as the fully sexually empowered woman who also channels the divine mother. And they're not separate from each other, they don't come at the expense of each other, but they are actually inseparable. So yeah, I'm
Mm.
just curious if there's anything you have to say to your journey around being a mother and navigating sexuality, and how that changes, because it is a potent initiation, and having a child does change our experience with sexuality and sexuality in general, regardless if we're a mother or not, has seasons. It ebbs and it flows. I think there can often be this expectation that sex is always supposed to look the way it once did, or that we have to get back to how it once was. But like the seasons and like the different chapters of life, I think it's this living, breathing, evolving thing that is always going to look different.
Mm. Yeah, let us give space for that, because how boring it would be if we just kept the same motions of sex alive in us. Mm. Yeah, first of all, I want to say that modern mothers are completely under-resourced, and that's just the fact. We're living in isolation. Like, we're not meant to live like this. We live in these shitty nuclear families where so much pressure is placed on both partners, but also primarily the mother. And so of course, like, we have the cultural story that, like, yeah, sex dies when we become parents, and
Mhm,
there's truth to that in some
mhm,
regard, because women are under fucking resourced. So I imagine, like, obviously we give space for so much to change sexually and in our bodies, and our bodies are completely different when we become mamas, and I experience that as awesome and super divine. I really enjoy my body and all of her expansion and shape shifting. But there's the realization that so much of our energy and, like, quite literally our physicality is given to these babies. Like,
mhm.
we are keeping them alive through the conduit of our breasts. We're making liquid gold to keep them alive, and that is also so psychedelic. And
Mm.
I really invite us all to really sit with what it means that our bodies nourish and sustain life, like, quite literally. All the building blocks of life are given to these little babies through liquid gold. Wow.
Mm.
Women are so magical. So a lot of our physicality is taken up. And, like, I co-slept with my son until he was, yeah, he just got his own bed around 4. So, like, he slept in the middle of us, and that played a huge, like, detrimental actually impact on our sex life. That has been a huge process. Like, it was an issue for my husband, after a time, like, for the good beginning. Like, he was, like, all in support, but, like, he could feel like he really missed intertwining our bodies in the night. But I was,
Mhm.
like, full on, like, not fucking happening. I'm in this bed to breastfeed and sleep. Like, I have no interest and that was my capacity because I was tapped out.
Yeah.
And he's super supportive. So it's not that, but it's the way society's structured. I'm not meant to do this alone. And despite having, like, play dates, and I'm not alone, but I am. I remember it being a curiosity of, like, will I feel like me again? Or, like,
Mm.
will I have this, like, deep primal sexual, like, I'm, like, super sexually oriented prior to having a baby. And it's been like a really slow rekindling in my own body, and that's been like a reclaiming of myself, and slowly, like, severing the connection but and the symbiosis between me and my son. That's done a lot for me. I've been so happy to, like, exclusively breastfeed for, like, I mean, yeah, he was breastfeeding forever, and I would probably still be doing it, to be honest, if he was able to handle my, like, boundaries, because he really started flipping out when I was like, no, not
Mm.
now. So it was, like, too much for him to negotiate. That sometimes it was a yes and sometimes it was a no. So
Mm.
around, like, 3.5, I think I stopped breastfeeding, but I really love breastfeeding a lot. And I can see that when that stopped, I reclaimed my body back, and that feeling of, like, whoa, here I am, and my boobs are more than just producing life for this baby. Like, oh wow, they also have sexual sensation. Like, I forgot that because they were completely off limits when I was breastfeeding. Like, I had no desire for him, my partner, to touch my boobs because they were
Mhm.
so overused. Like,
Right.
I was on demand breastfeeding. So it's like, whenever my baby wants booby, he gets booby 100%. And I love it. So it's like,
Mhm.
there's no space for any other energy. And that was fine with me. And I'm so happy that I can feel now, I'm in a new space. And that's been a journey.
Mm.
Mm. it for me required so much patience and consistent and clear communication and a lot of tears and confusion and just honesty of like I can't feel myself. I can't feel myself in that same way. I hope that that comes back or emerges in a new way, and I kind of trust that it will, but it's like I feel right now I have like a very singular devoted purpose. I'm in mother mode, and some women that that can evaporate much sooner for others. Like we all negotiate that differently. But
Mhm.
I feel for me it was a really long ride. And for the most I don't know how much my partner was super chill with it, but 4 years later I can say like things are so hot and so heavy and so delicious now, and like we're exploring a lot of really beautiful edgy things that I never thought we would. Yeah, it's I'm really proud of us. I'm really fucking proud of
Oh,
us.
oh, I love to hear that. So there's even been a rebirth of your sexual connection after the birth of the baby, and it took a long time to get there, but now you're tapping into this whole new dimension
Oh
of
my
connecting
god.
that way.
Oh my god. Yeah, I'll be honest, last summer it had been hard for a bit, but like last summer was quite challenging, and I could feel like we both hit a wall, and it was like, yo, if something doesn't change, we will eventually like do the split thing. Like it could definitely be 5 more years, but like this is not it's not really working.
Mhm.
And he was just like, I just want to have another baby, and I was just like, I want to fuck a woman, like we need to have a threesome, like 100%, like and it was just like it was so darling, like he's just such a wonderful man, and he was just so sweet. He was just like, I just want to have another baby with you, and I'm like, absolutely not, like it's not, that will kill us. I am not resourced enough yet. It was so
Mhm.
clear in me, and I'm so proud of myself to be so clear in my needs and my boundaries and not be swayed in his expectations or his needs or what all the grandparents are like, when is the next baby coming? And it's like, hey, fuck off. I have to be a full body yes for this. And
Mhm.
this like idea of like, yeah, he should have a sibling. And there's so much around like, but aren't you having another kid? And it's like, actually, yes, I am. But now this is my choice. It's coming soon. But this is now a year later, we're talking. Like he's been ready for many years, but for me to just be like so clear and like we need to do work, and it's not a kid, because you're forgetting how hard it is actually to have a new baby and to
Mhm.
have two children. So please, let's resource us. And like I have a lot of freaky weird ideas, but like point is, I have to like I have to feel connected to you and me. I have to remember what that original love that brought me all the way across the
Mhm.
world from California to Denmark, that I said yes to this. Like I have to rekindle and reconnect with that in a new way. And that's so it's been a really magical, beautiful, beautiful year of
Oh.
yummy, yummy, yummy sex.
Yum. I love hearing this. And I love, love, love hearing you speak to listening to your body around where you're actually at with that, because there can be so many shoulds and like trying to plan it all out and like, oh, how many years do we want the kids spaced apart and blah blah blah, like all these logical components. But if it doesn't feel right, it's probably going to create some stress, and it's probably going to continue to not feel right. And your wisdom around coming back to, I need to continue to tend that flame between us and that love that brought me all the way out to Denmark is so essential, because I think so many parents, and this happens in a lot of couples that I work with, like they just treat sex like it's not an important thing anymore. Usually, one person is upset about it, the other person might feel like it's not as important. And I think before having another kid, it's really important to reestablish that connection, because that polarity is what keeps the family together as a unit. And if you're not nurturing the relationship, the family is not going to stay together in a happy, fulfilling way. It's going to be, there's going to be huge pieces missing. And I think a lot of people actually try to have another baby to rekindle the relationship. I see that happen a lot. And
My
that's
mom
that's doing the
didn't work.
opposite.
Didn't work. It doesn't
No,
ever work. I'm like, it's a really bad idea.
it does the opposite. Yeah. So I love that your feminine wisdom and your body was just like knowing what you guys need. And now you're able to reestablish that foundation in a new, juicy way.
Mm.
That's opening all this new exploration. It's amazing.
Yeah. Yeah, I am so proud of us.
Wow, so proud of you too. And just the under-resourced thing too. I mean, that's one of my main reasons that I'm not sure if I will embark on the journey of motherhood or not, is because the nuclear family does not resonate with me. It's not how it was meant to be. It's not how we evolved as humans and got to where we are. And it was never meant to be a two-person job. There's a reason they say it takes a village to raise a child, and I fully believe that. And, was even just having the conversation with my partner last night around, once you get into that community setting again of being able to raise children together, there's also the rewiring around, can I also show up to care for other people's children as if they're my own, to really help and support with that? Or is there still that thinking of like, okay, that's your kid, that's on you, and
Yeah.
it takes a lot for us to even start to touch back in with those roots that we've come from and how we bring children into the world.
Yeah, yeah, totally. And I also just want to add, like, the babies that are coming through right now, they're a different caliber. Like,
Mhm,
they're absolutely here in assistance to Mother Earth.
mhm,
100%. They're so divinely dialed in. And if we want to like tie in that consciousness component, like what is required to be, I'm not really into like labels, and I know there's like whole subcultures of people who do this like conscious parenting thing, but I'm going to use that as like a loose term. Now, it is
mhm,
also a label and a thing, but if I can imagine how I was raised in punishment culture. So you
ooh,
do this, it's like reward and consequence and punishment, and maybe a little spanking with a wooden spoon or whatever. But
mhm,
it was fear based. And it's like that was how I was made to behave. And luckily I was like a pretty quote unquote well-behaved child. So like I stayed within the parameters until that's not true. That quickly in my childhood, but teenage, that's another story.
yep, I relate.
But but I can see like, wow, I don't use any of those fear-based tools. It's a whole different way of being with children. The
Mm,
capacity in the room that needs to be created to hold space for all of their emotions and allow them and really orient them to that their emotions are valid and needed and necessary and they're wise, and to not shut them down and shame them and punish them and use threats to like make getting out the door easier and all like the insane things it requires to be a parent.
mm,
I don't have the techniques my parents and all the other fucking parents used to have, because it was just like making, like, for one, it was survival for a long time. And then for two, it was like very um, Puritan Christian punishment based. Like,
mm,
listen to me or else I am authority and you are small. And the new paradigm we're creating is like you are also your own authority. Of course, like I have lived experience, so I create boundaries for you for sure. I really believe in
mhm,
boundaries and like creating safe containers, and there's limits. And I really feel kids thrive in knowing there is a limit. Like I can play around in this area, but like going
mhm,
outside, there are natural consequences, not like mom's going to punish me or hit me, but like I could get hurt if I do that
right.
thing. So like we work in what the realm of what a natural consequence would be if you jump off the roof. Like, I'm not going to yell at you, but you could break your leg. So probably not a smart idea. Um,
Mm,
but it's a whole new way of parenting, which also requires so much capacity and resource, which is also why I say mamas are also under resourced in the way of the presence required to be with these new star beings is quite astronomical. Really, to raise them and hold them in love and care in the way that I really feel is required for them to be resilient adults and approach all of the myriad of issues we have created on this planet with like innovative solutions and empathy and like ability to connect the
mm,
dots. Yeah, it requires that we lay the foundation now. And so I really envision a world where women are where societies are structured so women are supported, so mamas are supported. So
mm,
like it is an inherent They are centered, and it's just inherent, like a byproduct of society, that women are resourced, and there's like helpers all around, and aunties and grandmas and friends, and mamas get like infinite time off to be with their babies until like we restructure this whole career thing. That's probably another conversation. It's tricky, right? Like
Yeah.
it, we love what we do. Some of us, like, we love the work we do in the world, and I also feel like that's also why we're here. So then to, like, straddle that, like, yeah, I'm a mama, and that's my work in the world for sure, and I do these other things, and that's my work. But I see a lot of women, because we've tried to fit ourselves so deeply into the patriarchy and the patriarchal model of how life should be a fucking rat race, that we abandon our maternal instincts, and we cut our time short with our maternity leaves, or we send our kids away quicker, or we put them in front of the TV or whatever to get other shit done. And no shame in that, but I wonder about a world where we structured it in a way that women could still pursue what they wanted to without abandoning these super precious early formative years, where from a biological perspective, babies need mama. Straight up.
Mhm.
Sorry, dad isn't a substitute, other partner's not a substitute, kindergarten is certainly not a substitute. Baby needs mama. We regulate everything in them, regulate their nervous system, their heartbeats, their temperature,
Mhm.
their brain function, all of the energetic imprints of love and devotion. It all comes from mama.
Mm.
It's so big.
Yeah. Wow. I know, and I'm consistently impressed by you for how you bring your work into the world and are a full-time mama too. I don't know how you do it, but it's definitely one of the things within me where it's like I love my work, I love my career, and I'm terrified to even consider letting that go to become a mama. And I think if our world was structured differently, we could have, best of both worlds without going into total burnout. Because that's the other thing.
Exactly.
It's so true that so many of the sexual struggles I see in women are connected to burnout, to being in yang overdrive, to not nourishing their yin energy, not knowing how to prioritize being in their feminine in a way that they can replenish their systems, and often having so many expectations from the world around all the things that they're supposed to juggle and keep up with. And a woman's body is not made to have to spread herself so thin in that way, and to not have that time to be with baby and to be with body and to be with the earth. It's
Mm,
just I think it throws things off hormonally for a lot of women, and for me included. Like, I've really had to go through a journey of that, of learning to tune in with the yin cycle and cultivate balance and not try to push my body into overdrive based upon societal expectations.
mm,
um, so I think that's huge. And yeah, so much respect for the mamas who are finding a way to make it through the nuclear family and not having the support that they need. I think it's, one of the most important things that needs to change in this world. But also just loving so much the way that you're speaking about giving this gift to the future in the way that you are mothering, in the way that you are holding space for sovereign beings to think for themselves, to do things in their own way, to understand natural consequence, and to, in doing that, I think you're really also looking at, it requires a lot of deep introspection around, how do I want to answer this question that my child is asking, or how do I want to explain this natural consequence, instead of being in this autopilot programmed way of speaking to something. So, for example, like my great nephew was walking around naked, and he was just kind of like absentmindedly playing with himself. And his mom was like, "Hey, stop touching yourself." And I just asked her, "Well, why can't he?" And she stopped for a moment and she like thought, and she's like, "Well, okay, just go do it in your room." And I was like, okay, yeah. So we've got a little bit of like self reflection there, just thinking about like the why, like, why are we saying this? And then her mom came in, said the exact same thing to him 5 minutes later. And I said, well, why can't he? And she said, okay, we'll just do it in your room. And they both did the exact same thing where they paused and then they realized, okay, maybe it's not wrong for him to touch himself. Maybe there's something I'm trying to say around like do that in your own private space. And there still wasn't the full explanation there, but it was really interesting to just pose the question and to watch both of them take a moment to reflect and ask, where did this come from? Is it just like a programmed automatic response that like we're not supposed to touch certain parts of our body and that's just what's been passed down and it's what's been learned and so that's what I'm projecting onto my child? Or is there like an invitation there to look at how could I explain this in a way that a child might understand, in a way that's not going to program him to think, oh, something is wrong or bad about this part of my body,
Mm,
but instead to invite maybe a more specific container for him to be able to explore that rather than feeling like it's wrong or bad or off limits or shameful. Because when I work with people around shame around sexuality, so often those unconscious blockages can go so deep to a moment that they don't even remember, but it's more like what was somebody else's energy or the
yeah.
face they made around them exploring their bodies or around something that was perceived as like inappropriate sexual energy, and that gets imprinted into us on such a deep level before we even have the rational mind to think for ourselves about it, and often
Mm,
not even remembered consciously but remembered in the body as stuck energy.
yeah.
Mm.
Yeah, and that is the perfect opportunity in parenthood to like really take our beliefs and examine them in our hands, because there's infinite opportunities to steer and guide and shape. And then it's like, wait, but why? And how do I actually feel about this? And where did I get this idea? And I really appreciate living in another culture, because
Mm.
Scandinavian culture is super chill about nudity. And like all the women are topless. It's Europe also, but like especially in Denmark, like Denmark is actually known for like being mega, mega chill. Many women don't wear any tops at the beach, and there's many nude saunas, and like it's so
Mm.
chill here. And to come from Ohio, Midwest, and like super Puritan, like saw my mom naked a little bit, but like, yeah, have a lot around that. And like, no nude saunas in Ohio. It wasn't until I
Right.
went to California that it was like, Harbin, okay, yeah, but this is just for hippies. Like only hippies do this thing, and then to come to a whole culture where they're so chill, and it's just like so apparent, like, wow, we are deeply just indoctrinated into the beliefs of where we live and the times. Like none of
Mhm.
it's real. It's just man-made. And that's the beauty of like, oh, so I can be anyone and anything I want, and I can make the same space for my kid, because all of this is just a fucking illusion that we decided was like real and law and acceptable. And I'm like, okay, no, 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 no.
Yes, I love that. It's like you get to know yourself on a whole new level and create the world that you really want to create,
Mm,
which is so different than that old paradigm. Like, well, why can't I do this? Because I said so.
exactly.
There's so much
Exactly.
of that in the old parenting way.
Oh yeah, that's such a lazy, that's so lazy. Yeah.
And it's not teaching your kid to be a free thinker and to think for themselves. It's like implying this blatant acceptance of authority.
Yeah, which, to be honest, like in the world that's being created, which is like hypo technocracy, like my what I really prize is that my child is a critical thinker slash an embodied listener. Like,
Mhm.
because he will be flooded with propaganda and mind control, as he already is, as we all are. But like, at least it wasn't until I was like, what, 10, 11, 12 that like computer came, and like, so I got like that innocent childhood of like climbing trees and shit. And like he's gonna
Mhm.
have that in a completely different way. And it honestly totally stresses me out some days. I can get in really dark places about the influence technology already has on his little 4-year-old body. We don't have a
Mhm.
TV in our house, but like he sees stuff on our phone sometimes, and like, there's just no escaping it. And I have to like just pause and breathe and trust that this is the life he was born into, and it is what it is. But it's so important to me to consistently like make an art and a practice of asking. He's so good at asking questions anyways, but because it's just so easy to be influenced, we're all aware, like it's so easy to be marketed and lied to and manipulated. Like our brains are quite simple in that way. It's like enough times and it's like, okay, cool, that was it, I don't really need to research more. that's not how my brain works, but I see that's how like mass population's brain generally
Hmm.
works, because it's the simplified way of getting through life. And if also you inundate our brains with enough information, we go into information overwhelm, and then it's like, give me like the sound bite of it, and then I can just like forget the rest because I can't go into it. And
Yeah.
these are all really clever mechanisms through which to control us. So what I really emphasize is like, yes, that we all really ask the questions and feel in our bodies what is right for us, because there will be many stories told.
Mhm, mhm. And that curiosity is such a pattern disrupt to really snap us
Mm,
out of that
mm,
autopilot way of doing things.
yeah, I love that
Eh,
word, pattern disrupt. That's so
yeah,
nice.
it's so necessary because we can be so deeply ingrained in those
Mm,
patterns and not even realize it. And so to constantly be getting curious around our why behind something, or how could this go differently, or how is this going for me? How is this happening for me? What's possible here? I think
yeah.
it opens up a whole new world of possibility that also helps us get out of um, just getting stuck in fear. It can be really easy to portal on fear, and then when we invite the realm of possibility, I think you made a post about this sometime at the end of last year, where one of your friends said there's so much possibility in the ethers right now, and
Yeah.
I loved that, of getting curious around what else is possible and how else could we go about this. And I think curiosity is so huge in working through so many of the taboos that we've kind of discussed too, around just the feminine. Like, why do we think about this way? If we have an aversion to like bodily fluids, moon blood, dirt, like, why? Where does that come from? Can I
Mm,
actually look within and get curious around, where does that come from? Where did I learn that from? So much shame is a learned behavior. Nobody came out of the womb being like, oh, this is all disgusting. Like,
mm,
that was never anybody's thought. And shame is such a learned behavior in the way that we perceive so many of the taboo elements in our culture. If we look a little deeper and get curious, I think we can find a lot more truth that feels authentic to us, rather than just absorbing the cultural narrative around it.
mm,
I know that you love talking about moon blood. Is there anything you want to speak to on that topic, in the realm of
mm.
taboo and earth and being woman and all these things we've been touching on?
What a gift to be a woman, and what a gift to bleed. I love bleeding. I I feel a little sad that soon I will be pregnant, and that I know that I will go into a space of not bleeding, which is, it's also beautiful in its own way, but that's just saying how much I really cherish. I cherish the cyclicality of my monthly flow. Like, I really enjoy observing
Mm,
how I'm at the absolute mercy of my hormones. Like, wow, there's so much happening on the inside of me, and I am just like completely steered by it. And I don't mean that I'm like erratic and like completely, yeah, an emotional basket case, because that can be the stereotype of what a woman like at the mercy of her hormones is. But I mean that I am completely and divinely driven by my hormones. And honestly, we all are, if we pay enough attention and if we're not blocking them.
mhm,
But how glorious that we get this fifth vital sign every month, that we have this red river flowing from us that tells us of our health, and it tells us of the health of the earth. Um,
mm,
the health of the women is intricately connected to the health of the earth, and I really believe that what comes out of our wombs is speaking in novels of the wellness of our beings, of our organisms, of the mother organism. And it's, when women are really tuned into that, and when we're having a conversation with our blood and checking in with our blood, not only our blood, but also like the energetics and the qualities that are happening in our body and our emotions, and all of those nuanced experiences that come with going through the portal of bleeding. It is a mystical
mm,
experience, really. And this is what I've really loved over the years, of like really fine tuning, like, this is so mystical. I quite literally feel life in a different way as I'm approaching my blood. Like, it feels like the veils are thinning. I'm way more in contact with the plants. I'm way more in contact with, like, it's like I can feel the wind of life. Like,
mm.
it just in this way of like, my intuition is way sharper. I have those like premonition thoughts of like, thinking things, and then that person says that thing, and I'm like, that's weird. Those synchronistic moments, they're often happening around my blood portal, because my womb is very expanded with the nectar of life, like the space that would nourish a baby if I said yes. This is also fucking liquid red gold.
Mm-hmm.
um and women have always bled on the earth. Like this is the way we give back. Like this is how we serve the mother, because what our blood is made of is exactly what the earth and the soil needs to be fertilized. And isn't this just fascinating? Like we are in this symbiosis where we go to the earth, we give our blood, and flowers grow, and we nurture the soil. The soil becomes more dense and fertile and delicious. And then we birth on the earth, and we bleed, and we give our placentas back. And then the earth knows that we have a baby because we've planted that imprint, and she knows that energy. She can watch and protect that energy. We make love on the earth, and we get all those juices on the earth. We fertilize her. We die on the earth, and our bodies decompose, and the foxes eat us, and trees sprout. And it's like, this has always been how it's been.
Mm-hmm.
This is how the earth has been resourced. For a while, I was just feeling into like how I was resourced by the earth. And like, that's so obvious. We could go into that forever. Like, obviously, she's infinitely loving and resourcing us. And she's just
Mm-hmm.
so giving. And it was just like, wow, thank you. And here I want to give my blood as like a thank you, but I hadn't like fully connected that this is actually the gift that she wants us to give her, because she needs it. She needs our blood. She needs our bones.
Mm-hmm.
And I love knowing that like my garden is fertilized by my blood. Like I give my blood back. And this also for me is like it's a deeper conversation, because when I do it, I offer it as a prayer that she reads the information of my body, so she understands my health status, not only my health status, but the health status of all the women. Like I really pray to her that she supports the women, and she gives us the plants that we need. She grows the plants in our gardens that we need to heal us. Like she's just it's we often neglect what a living intelligence the earth is, and we think that we maybe can't have a communication line open. Like there's so much that we can do to have a conversation of like, hi, please feel my body, feel my energetics. What do I need? And she will give it to us. She will give it to us in guidance, in growing things, in messages, in angels, and people. Like the earth will orchestrate our life for us. I really believe this. And so
Mm-hmm.
I give my blood as a way of like, please read my information and help me walk my path with integrity, help me walk my path with vibrancy and awareness, and please keep bringing me back to my center and my heart space. And when my heart closes, like soften me again. And she's so willing, she wants to be in this communion with us. And we women, we have this beautiful monthly gift we can give her. It's so magical.
Wow, I love I love the particular languaging you're speaking to this around, because it reminds me of that biofeedback mechanism with the breast milk and the baby and the
Mm,
mother, and how, the mother receives through the baby's saliva what the baby needs and makes the proper nutrients to put into the breast milk and to fight off any pathogens and this sort of thing. And of course, we could have that relationship with our mother, the earth, too, and it's like
mm,
that's gotten so lost for so many of us. But just like we were talking about earlier, anything that we are in relationship with that we're not listening to, that we're not talking with, that we're talking at or ignoring, is going to start getting louder and speak up. And I think we've seen the earth do that in so many ways
mm,
recently through all kinds of natural disasters and just shaking things up, trying to get our attention, to pay attention to how we are treading upon her and what kind of relationship we have with her. And to me, one of the biggest problems that I see on this planet is our disconnect from closing the nutrient cycle. Like how you talked about, eventually we die and we give our bodies to her, and when we give the placenta back to the earth, and just all of these nutrient rich parts that gave us life, and then when we release them and we give them back to her, if we are not doing that, um, it's like that's what creates really like stagnant, soiled, disgusting waste. Like if we are throwing our food away rather than composting it and it's getting stuffed into a landmine, and we're flushing our poop down clean water, and it's getting eventually, like, all of our trash and our waste is getting brought back to the ocean, and these sort of things, rather than closing the nutrient cycle of giving our nutrients back to the earth in a way that she can work with properly, where there's space for it to breathe. Like when you go into a forest, there is so much death everywhere because everything is like decomposing and being fed back into the earth, and it smells delicious. You don't get that putrid, like, wow, it's been too long since I took my trash out smell. And so you
Exactly.
death is not, it doesn't have to be this like disgusting thing that needs to be thrown away. It needs to be folded back into the earth. And I see
Mm.
this disconnection from closing the nutrient cycle in so many areas. Even the way that we deal with our elders, how our elders are often like tucked away in nursing homes, and there's not that same reverence and respect for the role that the elders play in humanity in the way that there once was. They were the wisdom keepers, and we took care of them as a village in the same way that we took care of the children as a village, and in the same way that we were brought in and cared for by the elders as children. Like, we return that favor and we carry them out of this world in the same way they carried us into the world. And that part of the nutrient cycle has gotten really glitchy as well, because we live in a super globalized, hyper individualized nuclear family kind of society. And so
Yeah.
I just see so many places in which we take from the earth and we take from life, and we don't give back through the way that we work with death and feed it back into life. So I
Mm.
love the way that that ties into just everything you're talking about with our fluids and the way we connect with the earth.
Mm. We need to do another podcast recording just on death because there's so much to say there.
Oh, we
Yeah.
do. This one's on
Yeah.
birth and the next one
Mm.
can be on death.
Yeah, which are also the same thing, two sides of the same beautiful
Exactly.
experience.
Exactly. I
Mm.
wrote something recently, speaking to how when we are setting sail into the mystery and we don't know what's on the other side, and how that can be really intimidating. And sometimes um, the missing puzzle pieces are hidden in places not bound by logic. And I was using this kind of example of ancient seafaring people that had that pull to navigate across this big, vast blue ocean of mystery and not knowing what was on the other side. And there was that desire to go, and how on the other side was either a new life awaiting them or death. But are they really so different? Was the question that came to mind as I wrote that. And
Mm.
just as a kind of what I was dealing with in my own little microcosm around navigating the mystery. So yeah, they are so interwoven, and I would love to do another one on that topic and all the ways that it interweaves with this.
Mm.
Well, this has been amazing. Is there anything else, like a burning desire, that you have to share before we get into how to dive deeper into your work and your offerings? Anything else that you want to say to complete this space that we've been sharing?
Mm. Thank you for giving me the opportunity to come and speak with you. And this has been so nice. Mm. I'm so soft in my body. I will just fade away into dreamland with a big smile on my face.
Mm,
Yeah, but I would like to offer that women, we are magic, and our power is in our unification with other sisters. Our power is in our wombs. Our power is in the clarity we possess when we contact this
mm,
divine strength within. Um, it's always been here and it's always been ours. And the more we work together in circle spaces and we remember how women have always gathered and we remember how women have always supported each other, the easier it is to reclaim this natural way of being in our bodies and being together outside of this competitive, um, yeah, jealousy, these all of these wounds that we carry around our sisters.
mm.
that's all been seeded and planted. Like, this is not how women are supposed to be together. So this is also another complete topic, but I
I was
really
just
just,
gonna say we could do a whole
yeah,
other episode on that. I love.
totally, and we should, but yeah, it's a nice way to round up, because I think there are many women out there feeling super alone, or struggling with not really knowing how to connect in community with other women, or maybe seeing like Instagram women online having this like epic community, and it's like, where are my people? And it's like, they're there for sure. Women are there, and women are willing, and I think it begins with the work we do with ourselves, and really cultivating that self-love, and treasuring ourselves, and
Mhm.
treasuring our autonomy and our authority, and really finding our voice, finding our way in the world. And then we become a magnet. Then we begin to attract the women that are like, okay, there's my soul sister, and all of the other stuff fades away. So I want to encourage us all to get naked on the earth and bleed on her, and find our women, and dance, and really awaken, the new earth, the new Eden that is our design, that is meant for us.
Mm. Mhm. And yeah, so appreciate you bringing that topic, because the disconnection between women has been so seeded through all of the things we've been talking about today, our disempowerment around our bodies, and around our sexuality, and around our dependence on men for so long. I think the dependence that we've had on men, through having our rights taken away for so long,
Yeah.
pitted women against each other in a way that there was competition for survival, because there was competition for men, and men were, a very important piece of our survival in the world that we were living in. So yeah, I appreciate you just speaking to the way that, like, that's not how it started out. Like, women have always been the web weavers in sisterhood together, and in some ways we've lost track with that. And I think there's a huge resurgence of sacred sisterhood and mothering in community, and I love what you are doing to help revive that. It's such an inspiration, and so grateful for you, for doing the work that you do. And I guess one other thing I just wanted to mention, because I know we've been talking about wombs a lot, and for those women who no longer have their womb, I think I just want to note, you can always still connect with the energy of your womb. She's still there. That imprint is still there. Your body still has that connection with her. And I think that's, a whole other topic of how a lot of women have had their power taken away, by often being forced into medical procedures, or convinced into procedures that, maybe they didn't feel empowered to make a different choice around. And sometimes it was the right choice for them. And either way, no shame in any of it, but knowing that you can still cultivate that connection with your womb,
Mm,
regardless of if she is physically in your body still or not.
mm, yes.
Well, it's been such a pleasure and an honor to have you here today. So grateful to get to just absorb your amazing wisdom, and be in your energy, and play with these concepts with you. I would love to hear how people can dive deeper into your work and find more about what you're doing in the world.
Yes. You all can find me on Instagram at womb.song. And my website is rachelruva.com. I attend births here in Denmark. I support women, yeah, really generally working outside of the system. I really honor and advocate for autonomous and free births. I'm not really into the label thing, but basically women who are deciding to work with their instincts and their hormonal design. So get at me. I hold birth preparation courses, which end up being like such sweet sister circles. Like, seriously, every time I hold these, like, amazing. There's like such a twist on, like, you typically think like hospital birth prep, and I'm like, oh my God, we go so deep, and it's like we fuse so much. And but these women end up being like homies, like, totally. It's so lovely. All of these different women come with their giant bellies, and we talk about birth, and we debunk all of the bullshit and all the programming. And then we're like, oh my God, it's also like contacting God. Amazing. And then they're like friends, and then they hang out with their babies, and I see them years later. And this is just such a beautiful way of weaving community, because women want to be connected. And when we find out, like, that there's the truth is just in our bodies, then it's like, okay. So anyways, I'm holding those birth prep circles occasionally. And yeah, I hold a couple different courses here in Denmark with a woman named Christabella, and she is such a treasure in my life, a dear, dear friend and sister and mentor and muse and lover. And wow, I'm so grateful for this
Mm.
woman. We hold a birthkeeper immersion together, which is like a deep expansion on how to show up in the birth space as a birthkeeper. So it's a lot of like personal inner work, because we really want to expand beyond like just the physiological understanding of how birth works and understanding like all of
Mm.
the energetic components that we bring to the space. So that's a like, it's just a lab. And that's what we'd
Mm.
like to do. We hold another course called Embody Your Female Nervous System. And it's just lab play. And we get together and we put ourselves in really funky, edgy situations and we observe how our bodies respond and like, oh, that was interesting. So it's a lot of embodied learning.
Mm.
We're really of the thought like we can all over research ourselves to hell and back, and we all have infinite resources that we can read with our brains, but the gold is really in this physical in-person work that we can do together and in our own bodies, and really just bear witness to the power of the collective, and how we
Mm.
can heal together and mirror each other, and what really happens when women get together and we expose ourselves and we are vulnerable and honest. So yeah, we do a few different embodiment courses that all end up being like so incredibly fun and juicy and hilarious and transformational. Yeah, it's a deep dive and it's super dark and scary, and then there's also like joy and pleasure and play in there too.
Mm. Mm. I
So we're
love
having a lot
that.
of fun. If you're around in person, come hang out. I'm also like holding random village prenatals, which is like a free gathering for pregnant women to come and just be loved and doted on. So it's like women that are not pregnant come and offer foot massage and song, and we do sharing circle. And this is just like a gift that we can give back to the community and really center these women and honor that they are bringing new life into our community.
Mm.
So yeah.
Mm. So good. I know I'm always feeling
Yeah,
into
you're
how
always messaging me.
I'm like, I need to get to Denmark and come hang out with you. I love everything you're doing. And yeah, I always say, I'm like, if I ever decide to have a baby, I'm going to have to figure out how to go be in Denmark because I need Rachel's support in this. Like, you're the person that I would want to be guiding me on that journey. So,
Girl,
um,
please. Colorado is so on my bucket list. I obviously will come just live with you for a few months and be around, because wow, coming to Boulder would be crazy
oh, I love that.
someday.
Yeah, we gotta make this happen in person someday.
Mm.
Well, thank you so much. Everyone, go check out Rachel Ruva Womb Song on Instagram. She's amazing. She is just such a muse and constant, just potent inspiration and magic flowing through her in the most grounded, real, raw way. And so, please, please, please do yourselves a favor and go follow her and absorb more of her magic. Thank you so much, Rachel, for being here. It's so good to have you. And thank you, everyone, for joining us on Nectar, Sex, and Soul today. Have a really beautiful day. Thank you so much for dropping into Nectar, Sex, and Soul with me today. It's been a pleasure to connect with you. If this episode lit you up or illuminated something impactful for you in some way, I invite you to subscribe, leave a review, and share it with someone you feel would love to hear it. To learn more about my work, check out sorayaleonara.com, sign up for my newsletter, and follow me on Instagram and YouTube, where I share tons of free content, special offers, and ensure you're the first to know about my new offerings. I offer private coaching as well as courses, workshops, and retreats, so be sure to stay in touch if you'd like to go deeper together. Thank you, loves. Have a gorgeous day. Ciao.